Hey everybody, Mark here, and thanks so much for joining us for this week's Menlo Midweek podcast. We are diving in with Rochelle Summers and Phil Eubank to continue our series Christmas at the Movies. And just a heads up that we have tons going on between now and Christmas. If you want to get involved with some of the things that we have going on, we would love to have your help and your support as we are bringing hope and peace and joy to those around us in the forms of putting on Christmas concerts, broomball events for students, serving events around our campuses, and much more. So if this at all interests you, I'd love to encourage you to reach out to our team at 650-600-0402 and let us know that you would like to make a difference in your area or just come and hang out with us. So again, thank you so much for your continued support and generosity. We cannot do this show without you. And we have big plans for this show going forward into the new year that will require your help. So we'd love for you, if you have any experience at all with film or production or social media or anything like that, to reach out, let us know so we continue making a difference for good for the Bay Area and beyond. So now let's go ahead and jump into this week's Menlo Midweek podcast. Welcome, everybody, to the Menlo Midweek podcast. My name is Mark, and we have Rochelle Summers with us today.
Thank you for having me.
And I think Phil gets his own introduction from now on. I can't remember where we landed last time.
Yep, and I'm also here.
But Phil is back with
Phil
us.
is here.
Mm-hmm. What's up, everybody?
And we are continuing in our Christmas series, Christmas at the Movies. And I want to know, just to start out, I thought it'd be really fun. You kind of shared what your Christmas morning present experience opening was like. Mm-hmm. But Rochelle, what was Christmas morning like for you growing up?
Growing up, I would say it was a little bit of both chaos and my mom really trying for us to do like the individual gift giving thing.
Okay.
Curated chaos.
Yes. Beautiful. Yeah. So a little bit of both. Me as a parent now, I try to do the one at a time.
Okay.
With our kids, which is nice. And actually, until recently, on Christmas morning, my children only received one gift and a stocking from myself and my husband.
Okay.
That was on purpose.
Is it because you don't love them? Or?
Oh, no, I love them very much. But our kids were the only grandkids for a very long time. And so Christmas...
So it was just going nuts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Christmas Eve was the thing for
That's
them
fun.
with both our families.
Yeah.
Too many presents, overwhelming. And then it was like a really special gift from us Christmas
That's
morning.
awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
I know you love your kids. That was a joke.
How about you, Mark?
It was a mix of both. So I remember I'm someone that will, even if you give me something a day before my birthday and tell me to open it, I'll be like, I can't. It's not my birthday yet. Unless you insist that I open it then. Mm-hmm. So we would have presents underneath the tree. And then usually Santa would bring us a really cool gift that wasn't always wrapped.
Okay.
So I remember when I'd pass where the tree was in my house, I would hide my eyes so that I wouldn't see what Santa wrapped or what Santa brought for us. We would have some kind of pastry or dessert or a sticky bun, cinnamon bun kind of a thing in the morning. Mm-hmm. And then every other Christmas, my dad would be working in the hospital. So when he was working in the hospital, it was torture. It was, man, I got to wait for my dad to get home at 2 o'clock before we open gifts.
Man.
My mom would usually give us one or two to open. That was a puzzle or activity for us to do together until dad got home. Mm-hmm. But then after that, it was just opening in kind of similar fashion. We would open one at a time, typically. Mm-hmm. Yeah, which was the opposite of Missy. Missy's, I've heard
full
Missy,
chaos.
I think just full chaos.
Yeah, that seems
Just
right.
kind of on brand.
Yeah, it feels totally right.
Yeah.
It explains a lot, actually.
It does.
Yeah.
What about in the Eubank household?
Yeah, my parents, my mom was usually up sort of milling about, maybe making breakfast, and my dad, for whatever reason, he didn't he never knew his dad. His mom gave him up at birth. He was raised by his grandmother. His childhood was a complete mess. And so I think there was a lot of displaced hope in what Christmas could represent. So
Sure.
Especially for gifts and stuff, it was a kind of an all-out thing. And part of that for my dad was he was big into photography. And so he would spend, I'm not kidding, what felt like 10 hours, in the morning of Christmas, putting together and assembling the right lens and the right camera body and the right light and all the things that he wanted. And we're just all sort of sitting downstairs looking at our stockings. Every now and then we would be allowed to open our stockings without the camera. and then we would eat, and then maybe he would be down in time to do presents. But that was always kind of the joke. Like my dad, most of the year wasn't around, and then kind of when he was, it wasn't always awesome. And so Christmas was like this hilarious other side that we never really got to see except on that day.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
And so now for you as a dad, are you filling your dad's footsteps and just putting your kids through torture? Christmas morning?
I try not to. I try not to. I've been in ministry all my kids for all their lives, and so I think the thing that's hard is Christmas Day. I'm very tired, and so our kids are pretty cool with that. For a lot of years, we traveled on Christmas to go see Alyssa's family, and so we would do Christmas on Christmas Eve, and so now that timing has shifted a little bit. We get to have kind of Christmas together, which is sweet and special. And Alyssa makes cinnamon rolls that are incredible. And we'll kind of take time to usually like read an age-appropriate Christmas story together, and then now, we do gifts like kind of by turns, and some of the older kids, they like are very, Maisie's our traditionalist, and so once you've done it one time, it is now sacrosanct. You will do it that way till Christ returns, and maybe in the new heavens and new earth. I'm not sure yet. And so she's gonna bring like each thing to each kid, and if somebody tries to do it different, even if it's a 4-year-old losing his mind, she's like, no, we're doing it this way. So we'll have that to look forward to. And there's usually just kind of some sweet little family moments that we get to celebrate throughout that day. And then kind of the week after is a little bit more flexible in our schedules. They're out of school. Work stuff has slowed down after Christmas. So looking forward to that. It'll be great. This last week has been full on every level, and the next 3 weeks are going to be full on every level. And so I feel like Christmas is that time where usually I get sick actually on Christmas because my body's like, oh, we're done now?
Yeah,
okay,
right.
here.
Yeah.
So far so good. Feeling okay.
Yeah.
Sounds like you need a good dose of peace before Christmas Day comes around.
That's Mark's segue opportunity. Whoa.
I love this. You can. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
Great
Thank you.
job.
Thanks.
Yep.
That's the gift I brought to you today.
I'll receive it. Thank you so much.
I love that. It's great. Yeah, I think, we talked about peace this last weekend, and it is, I was mentioning before we hit record that I think peace, out of all the kind of things we think about at Christmas time, peace feels like that one that is most elusive. And, I used that quote this weekend that peace is not just like this feeling, but actually it's deeper than that. It's like a profound reality by which our hostility with God has ended. And so I think that's true. I also think that that moment, that experience of realizing that cosmic hostility with God has been, we've been invited to have it end in our lives and in the world. I think that's such a unique moment we get to think about and celebrate at Christmas because we see the stakes, we see what it took to do, and hopefully that brings some unique peace in our life. Peace is an objective sense of moral harmony. That was the quote I used. And so I think hopefully there's space and time for all that. My spiritual director talks about the difference between our life landscape and then our inscape. And so like landscape's like what's happening outside of you. Inscape, like what is that doing inside of you? And I think Christmas is an easy time to sort of forget about the inscape and just kind of power through the landscape. And, sometimes it's moments, sometimes it's, I'm going to take a minute before this next meeting, I'm going to earmark a little bit of time tonight, whatever. But I think for a lot of us, I think we're to a certain extent sort of addicted to the adrenaline of tradition. And so we actually don't want to deal with the inscape because we might not like what we find there, myself included. And so I think it takes some unique habits to cultivate that in this season.
Yeah.
For sure. We just started decorating for Christmas, or we did last week. And so, you make the yearly trek up to the attic and you're like, let me get all these boxes down. And then you realize, oh my gosh, how did we accumulate all these other boxes with other things in there? And, just going off of what you said of like, well, if we keep not acknowledging all the other things in our life and just kind of powering forward, we're going to just internalize all of the hard things or other things that we haven't been thinking of all throughout the year. And while we're trying to enjoy this wonderful present time, I don't know. I've been thinking about that a lot. You can't move forward in life if you're continually harboring or pushing down things or stuffing things in your attic.
Yeah, well, I'll use the metaphor a lot of times in relationships that it's like, like when you get onto an airplane, they give you the container of where your carry-on has to go, and you put your carry-on in. If it doesn't fit, it has to get checked. And then now, because everybody's wearing those like additional cross-body bag things, fanny packs over your shoulder, as I like to call them, they are like, hey, you can only have two things. So if you have like that thing and then a purse and then another bag, you're going to have to combine two or check one. And I just think that like a lot of times in our lives, it would be hilarious if we could visually show the kind of carry-ons that we're taking through our lives, right? Like it's not even in our attic. It's like we've got just roller bag after roller bag after roller bag of unaddressed trauma and angst and bitterness with people and work that we're dealing with, and just being able to even take a second and in a healthy way compartmentalize, like, what can I actually carry today? Like some of that I am not capable of carrying. And I think the good news of the gospel is that Jesus says, cool, you don't have to. Like you can admit your limitations. You can say, God, I can't fix my spouse. I can't fix my kids. I can't fix this colleague. I can't fix this classmate. I can't fix this teacher. And God goes, cool, not your job anyway. Like, what does it look like for you to walk faithfully today? And just letting God show us that. And then hopefully feeling like we can start leaving some of that baggage behind us. But I think a lot of times in relationships, we're just not connecting. Like, well, you can't even get on the flight to get connected. Like, you got way too much luggage you're carrying with you. So, I think that's probably true all the time, but especially at Christmas time.
I'm trying to think like what baggage would be with the one that you can like ride on. You know what I'm talking about? What kind of baggage is that?
Yeah, that's funny.
But a lot of times, and you started your message with this season is about slowing down, and intentionally slowing down will allow you to feel what you are carrying. And so Missy and I, we were trying to figure out what Christmas movie to watch last night as we were decorating our tree.
Die Hard.
We had that conversation. We landed on Miracle on 34th Street.
Okay.
And then that quickly changed to Elf.
Sure.
So,
Yep.
yeah, we compromised and we watched Elf.
Yeah.
So,
If you've never met Missy, it would make sense.
Yes.
That's all I'm saying.
No, it was great. I wasn't complaining.
It's good.
But it was in a lot of the Christmas lists of movies, Miracle on 34th Street was number one on Christmas lists. And so that put any pressure on you, Phil? Or how was, and I mean, I think it's the only movie that we're talking about so far that actually has a God component baked into the movie itself.
Yeah, well, actually, It's Wonderful Life is interesting because some people argue it's not a Christmas movie. So that's a whole other debate.
Yep.
Because if you think about it, it culminates in like a Christmas thing at the very end, but it's really like his whole life, and it's about a much bigger theme than that. I think that the thing that people were so kind about is that for people that this is a movie that they have nostalgic memory of,
Yes.
I think you want to like handle it with care. You know, you don't want to make it overly silly. You don't want to be flippant about it. Like that carries like really significant weight for people. And then I think increasingly, and I tried to make a pitch for this weekend, like we should watch old stuff. Like we should take time for this because in a culture where we have so much sort of recency bias that everything and everyone before me was stupid, and I'm so glad that we've arrived at this pinnacle of human evolution, and now we're crushing it at everything. Like, don't look at any news headline anywhere because that presupposition won't hold up. But I think that there's just something that they hold that can be really helpful because it is so much simpler. It feels like movies now assume everyone that watches them has ADHD. And it's like choo, 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 choo. Like any kind of movie is that way.
Right.
And so I just, I like I like its pace. And I think people that had this in their sort of lexicon of Christmas, they were very gracious. And people who didn't, hopefully you'll see me take a different approach this upcoming weekend with Elf because I assume more people know the story of Elf. And so I'm not going to tell the story the same way that I did in It's Wonderful Life. So I think that's just a different, every talk is different. You can, in a series like this, try to make it very formulaic, where you kind of go, okay, now this is the part of the talk where we tell the story of the movie. But I think it serves our church better to do it this way.
Yeah. So. And there's a line that you repeated, that was something along the lines of asking about this person, this main character. Is this person sick? No worse. He's discouraged.
Yep.
I feel like that was just enough right there to have me think about for the next week in itself.
Or even just to like underscore the like substructure assumption from the God character that discouragement is worse than sickness.
Yes.
Like, I think discouraged is also one of those words that I think sits underneath a lot of people's anger. A lot of people, when they say I'm disappointed, what they really mean is I'm discouraged. And like hopefully giving people a invitation to think about the restlessness with which they live, the thing that makes them feel discouraged, not encouraged, not feeling alive for today, not feeling hopeful for tomorrow, but feeling like, you know what, I'm disempowered. I'm feeling discouraged. I'm feeling like my life is disintegrating. So hopefully, it was a hard one, but hopefully we didn't leave people there. That was just where we tried to meet people.
Yeah. Discouragement, is a very lonely feeling too. You find yourself in your own thoughts sometimes, or you don't know how to express it at times. Mother Teresa said, "We can cure physical disease with medicine, but the only cure for loneliness, despair, and hopelessness is love." And I think that is the greatest gift that we can give people in seasons of discouragement, or even in the season of Christmas. Love is like the antidote to despair, I would say.
Well, I think a lot of that for us, like we go, what does love show up as in this season? I think maybe more now than ever, peace is translated through presence. And, I'll make Rochelle feel uncomfortable. Rochelle and Matt are Rochelle's husband, who is on our staff, campus pastor for Mountain View. Shout out. We often referred to him around the office as Rochelle's husband.
And the podcast last week.
And the podcast.
He loves that.
He does. Yeah. He really enjoys it. But both of them really do give a great gift of just being present, like not distracted, not like putting on the air of I'd rather be somewhere else. And I think that with as much that happens in this season, in as much as you can, man, put your phone down. Like if you know that there's a 5-minute conversation, don't make it 3 minutes. Let it be 10 minutes. Like what does it look like to linger in this season? If there's a principle from the Emmanuel, from the groundedness of the infinite becoming an infant, I think it's this idea that there is an unhurried presence of God, and that for us to follow him means we get to model that in our own lives. And you guys do a great job. Like I receive blessing from it. I am not inherently good at it. I have practices in my life to try to be better at it. And I think this time of the year where we are most prone to just drain one more thing out of our day, I would say, like, when you can, don't.
It's very kind.
Yes. And I think as we're approaching a season that we are so hurried in, the reminder to slow down and take inventory and that hopefully will point us towards what's most important and the reason for the season, as it like to be said. You had a few awesome lines about peace. Once when we find peace, peace is when basically we see our problems through God's promises, as well as we have to surrender to receive peace as well. So what does surrendering look like, and how can that inform the peace that we're trying to take in during this season?
Yeah, well, I think like a helpful reality is that we don't actually have control. So this idea of like I'm going to give up control to experience something, if that's the thing you think, totally get it. Like I wrestle with that as well. But I think probably the like more accurate epistemological understanding of control would be I am going to surrender my illusion of control. I'm going to say, God, I'm going to quit pretending that I'm in control, and as I do that, I'm going to be reminded, like you have two choices, right? When you do that, you either go, oh my gosh, there's impending dread. It's all going to fall apart because it all depends on me. It never did, by the way. Or we go, oh, thank you, God, that all these things I've been trying to manufacture outcomes for, all these things I've been trying to manipulate and triangulate people and situations to get what I want. God, I don't have to do that. Like, yeah, it may not end the way that I want it to end, but whoa, is that a more peaceful process? And so I think that, the promise of Christmas is that God was not just with us, he is with us. And so this illusion of control, we really can let it go. We really can release it. And I think it's almost, it's a little bit like I've used the metaphor for this idea before with the Chinese finger trap, where, the harder we pull, the more we're bound to it. I think that feels a lot like how we struggle with peace, but it's actually like when we let go, that simultaneously the act of like letting go gives us greater freedom. I think the idea of relinquishing this illusion of control simultaneously gives us a deeper sense of peace as we're rooted in Jesus. So, hopefully even in the talk, hopefully even in our services, I love how integrated Christmas services feel because it all kind of talks to it. Like the design language, if you will, of a Christmas service is so common that hopefully it lets people kind of lean into it. You're not going, oh, I've never heard this song before, I don't like that. You're going like, oh, Christmas, you just are sort of swept up in it. And I think we can find God's peace in that. And then, my prayer is always, God, help this to still matter on Monday, help this matter on Tuesday, help this matter as people are facing real world lives and challenges. And this just wasn't like a fun little serotonin hit in 1 hour on a Sunday, but this is something that they can carry with them. So,
and I think this time of year as well, people are hungry for peace. People are hungry for something more. And so for our friends, coworkers, neighbors, family members that might not feel comfortable surrendering to a God that they may or may not even acknowledge exists, how can we help with this idea of letting go of control or whatever that looks like in hopes not to manufacture outcomes?
Right.
How can we have these conversations? How can we encourage people that might not be able to connect the I'm letting go to there's a God that will then take control?
Yeah, I mean, I think that on one level, the more we can help our friends and family that don't know Jesus understand that we're normal people and that all the challenges they feel around Christmas time, we do too. I would say in church world, sometimes we feel them more. I have, this is my first Christmas season at Menlo, and there is not a day and not an hour that I could not be doing something somewhere related to Christmas, And in church world, we sort of we just charge up for between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And so, for that neighbor, coworker, friend, family member, maybe, hey, how's Christmas going for you? Oh man, I'm just really overwhelmed. You know what? Honestly, me too. I'm feeling that stuff too. I'll be honest with you, man. I was spending some kind of personal study time today, honestly asking God, can you take some of this off my plate? Right? It could just be that simple. It doesn't have to be well, if you accepted Jesus, it can just be, you can be a normal human being. And I think that seasons like this, we have more in common culturally than we have different. And then I think that there are really fun opportunities to invite people. If you're planning on coming to the Classic Christmas concert on Friday this week, invite a friend. That is the least threatening environment. It's going to be incredible. Anton's going to do a splendid job. It's going to all feel totally familiar to them because it's super Christmas time. And we told a story at Menlo Park this week of somebody that one of our worship leaders had invited to that concert, and they hadn't been in church since they were 5 years old.
Wow.
And they didn't know why, but they just were weeping through the whole concert.
Yeah.
And you just don't know, what does it look like for you to connect the divine to the sentimental, right? And I think that's a unique opportunity we have as followers at Christmas time. And maybe that's inviting somebody to, this question exists at Christmas and Easter in a way that it never does, even in our community. This is the question. Where are you spending Christmas Eve? Where are you spending Christmas Eve? Oh, we're going to our parents. Okay, cool, great. How awesome. Where do they live?
Yeah.
Oh, we're just staying around here. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Would you like to come to church that morning, that afternoon, that evening with my family? We'd love to have you. Maybe even better. Do you want to have a meal with us? I just think that the barrier to entry of hospitality to turn sentimentality into a divine invitation is really, really big in this month.
Love that.
It's beautiful.
What do you think, Rochelle?
I agree, and I think that's great. Also, I would say, something that is very relatable all around is trying to figure out what is urgent versus what is important during this season. And how do you find peace in figuring those things out? You know, like there's always going to be a deadline. There's always the next meeting. There's always the next gift to purchase, the next, party to go to, which can sometimes feel overwhelming. But what is more important in this season? Who are the people you are with? And how can you bring the presence of peace in those, urgent times?
So good.
And I think on top of that, if there's things that you do, first of all, if your family has traditions that are not life-giving, you should change it.
Yes.
Like you should not do those traditions. So it's like, oh, we always do this. Like, yeah, that's exhausting. I always think about that, honestly, for like moms out there that feel like they're doing just the lion's share of something. And it's like, oh, we always have to do this. Like I hear stuff almost every day. And if you're, a mom or a dad, who knows, but you feel like this area, this tradition is all on me, I would say, first of all, let people know the weight of that,
Right.
and offer to have them share it with you. I would use it that I want to offer to have you share this with me, or like, hey, can we just take I'm tired. Can we take this year off of that? Because I think that we do a lot out of duty that we just don't set up good boundaries for. And then we go, why am I so exhausted? And like, honestly, you won't want to hear me say this. You're exhausted because you didn't set up good boundaries. That's not their fault. That's yours. And so we get the opportunity. No is in our vocabulary, whether we're using it or not. And so I think that idea of what is urgent versus what's important, and what is life-giving versus what is life-taking.
Yeah.
I think those are really good questions to ask right now. And even if you're like, yeah, but it's already scheduled. It's already, people are already, I don't care what people are expecting. You can change. You can change even right now for the sake of you being able to experience these really meaningful Advent components that help us anticipate and celebrate the arrival of Jesus 2,000 years ago, and not just commiserate at the end that we did all of these things,
Right.
But we're exhausted.
For sure.
That's great. Well, going forward, we're moving out of the classics and into the contemporary classics with Elf next week. Is there anything else you'd like to prep our community on as we're moving forward towards Christmas?
Well, I mean, Elf's a great movie, so buckle up for that. It'll be fun. And I think that it's a great, I like the next couple weeks, kind of where we're going. I think will be hopefully helpful. And if you're younger and you're like, are we going to look at movies that are, filmed in color? Yes, yeah, we are. So hopefully you hang in with us. And then, the end of this week. So if you're listening to this on Wednesday, the 6th, on Friday the 8th, the email newsletter list of Menlo will receive an update. I've been talking about it most of this year, but early this year, I got an email from a group of survivors of abuse from Menlo about 30 years ago, and really, really difficult, very tragic, and really they still need healing. And we began a conversation together, and it was kind of a back and forth a little bit, and had a mediated conversation, and then it was pretty clear that restorative justice was a process that was going to be very helpful, not just to this group of survivors, but if there's anybody else over the course of the decades that maybe has not felt comfortable to reach out. And if you don't understand this about especially abuse within the church, is that oftentimes it takes people decades before sort of that power imbalance and them growing up as an adult are willing and maybe even able to verbalize what happened to them. And so we always want to be a community where someone could raise their hand and say, I need help. This happened to me. And not just for their good. Well, we want it to be that way. We as a church will also benefit because I would say we want to always be thinking about ways to get better. We always want to say, what does it look like to draw the biggest circle of safety around the next generation at Menlo? We want at all of our campuses, we want where students and kids spend time to be the safest places in all of our communities. And so I think this process will help us get better at that. We've certainly had 3 years of getting better at that, and we're committed to continuing to do that. And then I just think, candidly, I think that there is, I think there's a spiritual component to dealing honestly with our past.
Yes.
And I think that's true for us personally. I certainly have lived that out in my own life related to childhood trauma. I also think it's true for our church. And in 150 years, if we think that there's nothing we should ever look back at, we're just probably not being very honest. We have people who have done amazing things and God's done incredible things through. And then we have people through the cover of church that have used that as really as a precursor for abuse. And so even in some cases where the perpetrators of that abuse are no longer alive, we can still, we may not, it may not be our fault, it is still our responsibility.
Yeah.
And so the email that will go out will list some kind of important information. We're working with sort of a nonprofit. It's actually not Christian. It's led by two Jewish ladies, but a restorative justice process organization. There'll be a video that explains the process. It's about a half an hour long that's linked in there, an invitation to a town hall meeting with that organization in January to answer any further questions. And then sort of what the next steps for that look like. So it'll be on our website. We'll keep that updated. We'll send it out Friday. I'll talk about it a little bit this weekend. But I just think that the thing we all think about, like we all think about when we do stuff like this, and it's been this long, is this question of like, do we really, it's been a long time. Do we really need to do this? Yeah. And I understand that, especially if you don't have any connection to this. I totally get it. I would say this is really about a posture of humility and repentance organizationally to say we want to be open, we want to be honest, we want to be thoughtful, we want to make sure that whatever we can. These are not people that like used to exist. These are human beings created in the image of God with infinite dignity, value, and worth that are walking around today with harm that was caused while they were at Menlo. And if whatever way we can be a part of the redemptive story of God in their life, man, I just think that is something we should all sign on for. So I wanted you to hear it from me before it goes public. You'll feel like you've heard it a lot over the next week or two, but I hope you hear the spirit in which it's intended.
Yes.
Well, thank you for helping us with that, and thank you for the year it's been. Wow. I was looking at our Christmas services last year, and Phil was there, and I was like, I don't think he was actually on staff with us at that time, but you still flew out.
I had a couple months as a volunteer for Menlo Church at the end of 2022 for sure. Yep. No, it's great, and being able to experience Menlo at Christmas time, not just flying in for Christmas Eve, but like being here is pretty fun. I would say in Colorado, Easter on some levels was almost bigger than Christmas, and at Menlo, it's exactly the opposite of that. And so being able to kind of like see and sense that, I think it takes a year in a new ministry to just understand people. And I've had a chance to be at all of our campuses quite a few times and get to know campus staff and people at each campus, and then to do that sort of at each season of the year. Hopefully, it's going to help me better understand and be able to relate to, and then hopefully help our staff to be able to be more unified to go, oh, Phil's pushing here, or he's thinking about that, but like he's not as stupid as he was a year ago. He has some idea of what's happening. So
it's growth.
Yeah, I'm glad to be less stupid than I was 12 months ago.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, it's an amazing milestone for us to have you here for a year. And speaking of milestones, I know we're going to wrap up, but you had a great accomplishment this past weekend.
Big deal, ladies and gentlemen.
We need to celebrate what you did. Why don't you tell us about it?
We ran a marathon, we being me, Keith Riley, and Joshua Jewel Horton.
Is that a metaphorical? Like you guys just had a long day? Or?
It felt like that. It felt like a really long day. No, we ran the California International Marathon in Sacramento. Big shout out to Josh. He was really the one that kind of included us in this goal that he had, and somehow along the lines 4 months ago we thought this was a good idea. And at different points yesterday we're all questioning that.
Sure.
On Sunday.
Yeah, tripping Josh.
Yeah. But it was something that is very unique in the way that it tests all parts. Like I felt tested the whole time. Never really felt great. Didn't get that runner's high of like, this is amazing. Right. Meanwhile, Keith Riley is just bouncing around like a bushy-tailed bunny rabbit, going from people to people, like high-fiving the crowd on the way in, and I'm just like focused on taking another step.
Wow.
But it was something. I still don't really know what it was. I don't know if I'll do it again. But I'm glad that I did it.
Yeah, if you were like, I'm definitely doing it again 2 days later, I would be legitimately concerned about you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Way to go, dude. What was your time?
A little bit over 5 hours.
Way to go.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Keith and I were trying to shoot for under 4.
Yeah.
And we were I was holding him back, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
He absolutely could have got well under 4, but he was pacing me for like the last 6 to 7 miles, and we were right there.
It's great, dude.
That's
Did a great
wonderful.
job.
But thanks,
you
everyone.
want to show your medal to the camera?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And thanks, everyone online that helped out as I was gone
Yes.
on Sunday. Some of our host team
Awesome.
pitched in. Our prayer team pitched in. They were praying for me. I could feel it. So
What if somebody hears that and they're like, I didn't know there were teams. Can I help?
absolutely, they
How would they do
can. Literally talk to anyone. The best way would just come straight to me. You could text our team at 650-600-0402. And what I love about the Christmas season is that we are just encouraging everyone to help pitch in, no matter if that is putting up decorations, passing out a donut, pouring some coffee, singing with us on stage. Doesn't really matter. We just want to include everyone in trying to being bearers of peace and joy and love and all of that stuff that we're also receiving. And so
Very good.
there are plenty of ways to do that in person, but online, we get the privilege of being able to do that for not only the people here in the Bay that join us on campus, but people in the Bay that are considering joining us, and then people outside of the Bay as well.
Yeah.
Whether that's joining us in person or joining somewhere in their local communities, helping people take next steps across the country, across the world. So we are lucky to be able to make a big difference wherever we are, and you can make a difference too at home right now.
Yes. Well, and if you're really passionate about digital ministry, Mark's being bashful, so I won't be for him. And you're watching this especially, we are in part of a studio that, if we're honest, until very recently, the rest of the studio was really kind of like a storage room under construction. But as of like last night, the rest of the space is much more prepared for this kind of studio experience to be replicated 2 or 3 more times. And so if you want to help really set some vision for what a space like this could look like, what storytelling at Menlo looks like, how we might do training, how we might capture great, fun, cool new ideas. Mark would love your help too. So I think it's a really fun way. Like, there's so much that God has done at Menlo through digital ministry, through Mark's leadership, and I think the next season is even brighter. And so if you go, man, I think about all the cool stuff I've gotten to see over the last few years, it's going to get even cooler, and you could have a chance to be a part of it. I just encourage you, if you're thinking about it, just reach out, take a step. It could make a bigger difference in your life and in the lives of other people than you know.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you soon.
See you guys.